Hey everyone, and welcome to Real Talk. I am Rochelle Marie Lawson, known as the Queen of Feeling Fabulous, and I have a panelist here with us tonight. We're going to be talking about, the women narratives that we hear around, all things associated with us women, and it's going to be really some engaging dialogue. I'm going to let my panelist introduce herself in a few minutes. But if you like the show, please share it with everyone you like, you love, and care about, particularly us women, because this is where we unite to have real open conversations about things that affect us women in today's world. And not sure what's going on in your part of the world, but in our part of the world, we're trying to keep it real. That's why we have Real Talk. Also, I want to say, if you subscribe, you get advanced notification of the show topics, and you can also possibly have an opportunity to be a panelist on the show. So, the more we can engage in conversation and have this dialogue about the things that affect us women, the more united we can become in understanding how we can unite to change the world to make it a better place for us women and men. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump in and let my panelist introduce herself, and then I will open up and share with you the topic of tonight's discussion. So I'm welcoming my friend. I haven't seen her for a long time. Her name is Tazima, and I'm going to let Carla in as well. But Tazima, hey Carla, we're already live, so we're just going to do some quick introductions. Tazima is here. And Tazima, please share with the viewers a quick 15 seconds about you and what you do and who you are and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Tazima Paris. I am a sex coach and pleasure mentor for grown ass women. I help women identify their needs and communicate them in ways that their partners can understand. I also help women. I'm a disruptor of the women's empowerment movement because they leave out sex. And sex is a massive source of power for us if we can embrace it and use it how we choose rather than how it's being dictated or restricted by society.
I love it, love it, love it. All right, so that's panelist number one. Y'all hear me now. We're going to have a good show tonight. And so let's open up and let Carla tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do.
So I'm Carla Alonso, and I'm actually a youth motivational speaker, but I also do women empowerment. And I just started a nonprofit for the youth. It's called the Mastery of Possibilities. So I think for me, it started off from just kind of going backwards from cancer and healing that little girl. So I feel like my voice needs to be heard with a lot of the youth nowadays and kind of help them through whatever it is that they're going through now, a lot of mental health. So I went through that growing up. So that's the space that I'm in right now, which is funny because earlier I took a girls talk sex ed class, and it was kind of interesting because now you're talking about it.
Well, wonderful. Well, it's good to have you. And so I'm going to just jump in because we have about 26 minutes, ladies, and it goes really quick. And so it's kind of good that it's three of us because it'll allow each of us to extrapolate, or rather you all to extrapolate on the topics at hand, the topic of discussion. So the topic tonight is a safe place for women to come to. This is a safe place for women to come together, as I shared. But tonight's discussion is, let me tell you a little bit about it. While historical narratives are often embraced as representing the true history when it comes to women, there is a growing awareness of the degree to which they are, in fact, composed of specific interpretations of certain events and not of others. More than representing a specific version of the past, historical narratives are also oriented to the future. They create deep beliefs about who we are, where we come from, and what are the right prospects. They also construct images of others and meanings of intergroup relations, describing others as enemies or allies, superiors or inferiors. Thus, historical narratives prescribe a specific course of action and justify our attitudes and behaviors about women and towards women. So ladies, I know this is kind of a little deep conversation, but I want to ask you all, the first question I want to ask is, what do you think about the historical perspectives that are shared or placed out there about us women? And Tazima, I want to start with you.
Oh, one of my favorite topics. This is actually where I start when I'm working with clients of like, here's where we are. You're here on the map. You know, it's the little red dot. And part of that is that women are not just treated as second-class citizens or, not as important or a lesser sex, whatever. It's not just that. It's actually that women are held as property. And if you think about why women are valued in this society, it's for the productivity of our wombs, not the beings that we are, not what we contribute to society, but are we productive? And the productivity is attached to making children, which is why, and that is the root of why it's better to be young and make sure you don't look, you don't look like you got the crow's feet, or like you fit like a 15-year-old, or you expire at 35. Why? That number is not accidental. That number is the age when geriatric pregnancy starts.
Right.
Ridiculous. The age specifically that the worshiping of youth or honoring or prioritizing of youth, and specifically around younger women, is about their productivity. Women's work is not seen as productive. Women's wombs are seen as productive. And so even what they're doing with Roe v. Wade right now, and what they have done with Roe v. Wade and the continuing abortion bans and all that, it's actually about productivity. It's not about women. It's not about children. It's not about any of that. So I just want to dig in on that piece of it.
Well, girl, hold tight, because we finna get deep. Carla, share, what are your thoughts about the historical narratives that we're discussing here when it comes to us women?
Well, kind of like what she said, right? It's true. If we don't stay looking young, I feel like we don't matter in the world, right? It's just kind of like they just kind of toss us to the side, like that's it. I see it so much, and even like going into a job or anything, right? They look at you right away to see like, are you young enough? Can you keep up with us, right? And if we're older, it's like, no, we want the new generation coming in and stuff. So yeah, I mean, everything that she said, I mean, I'm just like,
That's interesting, Tazima. You dropped, girl.
Yeah.
Like a mic drop. You dropped some game right there, because it's so true. Back in the day, women were, particularly women of color, or I want to say African American women or women of African descent, we were bred, to have more babies, to be products, and so that the plantations can produce more goods and services, so to speak. And the other thing is that young girls, very young girls, prepubescent girls, were being sexually assaulted for that particular reason. And then all of a sudden you get to 35 and nobody wants to touch you because you're old, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's some real dialogue that happened then, and it's still happening today. It may be happening in a different way, not as blatant, but it is still happening today. And so I'm glad you shared that, because I think that's some deep stuff that we need to really examine, particularly since they're taking away our rights. And I want to move into this next question with regards to our rights as women. What do you think women should do right now when it comes to staying strong with our right to be seen as equal? And I'm going to start with you, Carla. What do you think about that?
I think we constantly have to use our voices, right? I feel like we have to speak up all the time, and in a way where our voices are loud, but also respectful, right? Where we're seen in a respectful way, the way we express ourselves and we talk. And can I go back to a little bit of what you said a little while ago?
Yeah,
Interesting, because I was having a conversation with a gentleman, a friend of mine, and he's like, if you were to leave your husband, right, he's like, remember, he goes, the age that you are. He's like, who's going to want you? He's like, when you're older. He's like, and you have kids. And I was like, but I to me, I feel like that, what he said, it really questioned me, because I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? I'm like, there's nothing, I still have a lot of life left, right? But it's like what you just said, right? I mean, the conversation before, but it was about our youth, right? Staying young and looking young so somebody else can want us. And I was like, that just didn't click with me when he said that, because I was like, I'm still young. I mean, I might be older, I'm like, but I'm still young at heart, and I'm still young. But for him to make that comment was very questionable to me.
See, that just tells you how men really still think about us. And you know, it's very interesting with regards to that. Tazima, what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah. All the thoughts. The immediate, Carla, I'm glad you mentioned that conversation, because I think a lot of us have similar conversations. It might be in the workforce, or it might be with regard to relationship or whatever. And I want to remind us and the listeners that women only got the right to have their own credit cards without the permission or a cosigner of a man in 1973.
Bam!
1973. It wasn't that long ago.
Right.
And so staying strong to be held as equal. One, we have to understand our own value, and our value is not how few lines we have or how few puckers there are on our thighs. Like, it's not about that at all. We have our own inherent value, but if we don't know what that is, because we're reaching outside to look for someone to tell us that we're valuable, we're already lost. So connecting with who you are, embracing that, prioritizing the things that you love is the practice that you have, that you can raise your standard. And when I teach my clients how to do this for themselves, what ends up happening is their standards get higher, their boundaries get stronger, and telling someone that they're not going to tolerate the BS or what's happening becomes a no-brainer. It's actually easy for them. I don't have to script them, because they noticed, oh, wow, this person out here is not treating me as well as I treat myself.
I love it. I love it. You know, you dropped some real information, and I don't think people realize that we have had to fight for the little rights that men take for granted. For instance, you know, women, we didn't have a right to vote. We weren't smart enough to figure out who we could vote for. And women of color actually didn't get a right to vote until the 1960s, even though the suffrage movement was in the early 1900s. Okay. The fact that you said, you know, we couldn't even get our own credit card, let alone go out and try and buy a car by yourself, because you needed your husband to co-sign. In the workplace, I remember when I graduated from engineering school, I couldn't get hired as an electrical engineer. And this was in the late 80s, because I was a woman, and I was told that we would love to hire you. You did fabulous, but you're going to be working around men that are around your father's age. And until we can make them comfortable, we gotta figure it out. So I never got that. I never got the call. And so I think a lot of times we take for granted some of the things that we've had to fight to get. We are just as equal as men. And I'm gonna say we're more powerful. We're more powerful. You know, men leave their mamas and get married their wives, and their wives become their mama. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's real fact. That's real fact. And so, for us to be discounted, and we still have to fight for certain rights, and now our rights are that we fought so hard to get. Who has proclaimed that they are the king and the kings of our body is not right. And I think sometimes we have women out there that are complacent about this because they don't feel it affects them, but it affects all women. And so another question I want to ask you ladies with regards to the historical narratives is the whole housewife type of thing. You know, you have kids. Once you start having kids, you know, you really shouldn't be able to, you can't handle raising the kids and, you know, having a job and, you know, being a professional woman and all of that. What are your thoughts about the historical narratives that have been placed on women that, for one, may not want to have kids and want to be that professional person, or two, can go home cook the bacon, make the bacon, sell the bacon, and raise the kids at the same time. So Tazima, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts about that?
So this goes to the white supremacist feminism movement. Has this whole narrative about, and this basically was the first wave of feminism in this country, was white women fighting for white women's values. And I'm not saying that there aren't Black women who were at home, you know, housewives, got it, understood, and also women, other women of color, immigrants, all kinds of folks. There are a bunch of different narratives that are actually happening in our real life. Women choosing outside of the script of grow up, be pretty, get a partner, have some kids. If you're doing anything that's outside of that, including getting a divorce, waiting a little longer, getting a degree, any number of things that are outside of that very narrow band of the script, it takes strength to do that. Women are already exhibiting their strength just by not following the narrative. And then once they get an opportunity to do the narrative, we're like, well, maybe I do want to stay home. Like, also, why are we shaming each other for those women who do want to stay home and do want to take care of the kids? I am happily child-free, for example. I don't have kids, don't plan to have kids. And people ask me, again, about that value that I'm supposed to have of perpetuating the species. Like, why don't you have kids? Or why doesn't Oprah have kids? Oprah is changing the world. Right. Why are you talking to her about children? She's changing the lives of millions of children with her schools, or like showing this is a possibility of your life as a woman or a girl. And so if we can start breaking down the capacity for an individual to make that choice, no matter who they are, how they identify, whether they identify as a woman or a man or something in between, all good. But right. Let's start being advocates for one another when we're talking about breaking these scripts. That's going to be key.
I love it. Carla, I want to ask you this with regards to the narratives that have been placed on women, for example, you know, women who decide not to have children, and then they're placed a stigma is placed upon them because they decide not to have children. Not every woman wants to have a child, but that doesn't make her any less than women who do want to have children. What are your thoughts about the historical narratives? And I'm going to say this. I know, Carla, you're a woman of color because I see the Alonzo as your last name. And you know, in our cultures, it was like when I was growing up, or when I first got married, they're like, okay, you got married. Now, when you going to get pregnant? And I'm like, well, I don't even like kids. So, you know, you know what I mean? But there was a stigmatism that I needed to have. I got married and I need to start having kids right away. I got married when I was 18. I was a junior in college. I know in our cultures that was once placed upon us to get married, have kids young, and so on and so forth. And what are your thoughts, Carla, with regards to the historical narratives behind breaking those cultural barriers that have been in our cultures for so long and standing strong in our shoes while we break those barriers that don't fit us in society today?
So one thing I can say, I'm so grateful for my mom. She never pushed me to have kids. I had a lot of kids, but she never pushed me. But I was reading something the other day where it even says that not everybody is required to get married, right? Like there's so many of us that we have like that little seed inside of us to be unique, right? And it's meant for us to have kids or not have kids. And I think nowadays I hear so many youth and just adults saying they don't want to have kids. They're done. They don't want to bring kids into this world. And I honestly feel like the way our world is turning and the way our world is at the moment, I feel like kids shouldn't be in this world anymore. Like I feel like we're that part of us just growing up and just being adults and not bringing kids into this world that we're having. I feel like that's probably the right decision for a lot of people. But I mean, being a Latina, right? My mom, I mean, Hispanics, as soon as you get married, that's the first thing they ask you is, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Or you're pregnant, or you're pregnant. Is because, I'm sorry. Are you getting married because you're pregnant? And it's like, no. But then right away, as soon as, so when are you going to plan? And then when you have a kid, when's the next kid coming? It's like, and it's definitely, we have to break the cycle. And I know nowadays a lot of that cycle is being broken with our next generation, because I constantly keep hearing it. I don't want to have kids. I don't want to bring kids into this world. Like, I have a son who's 23. He has a kid, and he's like, that's it. He's like, I don't want to raise kids in this world anymore. He's all, this world is nasty. He's like, it's a horrible world to live in. He's on it now to raise my kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because my kids, they don't want to have kids. And I was talking to my daughter, and it's funny, she's going to be 30, and that whole generation of her era, or that age group, so to speak, is like, they don't want to have kids. And I'm like, well, what is it? And she says, well, I don't know. I just, maybe later I might want to, but right now I don't want to. There's so much in the world that I want to see, that I want to do. And, she says, to be honest, I'm kind of selfish. I like sleeping in, and, I like doing things, and I don't want to have the stigma of, I have to do something because somebody else, you did it, or grandma did it, or whoever. And then when I asked my son, he says, well, the world is a really screwed up place right now. And he's going to be 33. The world is a really screwed up place right now. Now, they have 2 older brothers who have, between them, 8 kids. And so it's like, and I'm saying this because there's a gap. From the oldest boy to my daughter, there's a 16-year gap. And then from the second boy to my daughter's 13. So it's a 10 and 13-year gap for my youngest son. And it's like, in that gap, there was something that changed, where the kids today, that's in their late 20s, early 30s, they're like re-examining things and saying, no, I don't want to bring kids into this world. Look how crazy it is. These kids have more problems than the law allow. And we need, until we can get those problems and support those issues with the children that are what they're having today, I don't want to bring a child into this world. So it's really interesting how things have been placed, and how actually today's society of women are changing the narrative of, no, you don't have to get married at 18, 19, 20. You don't have to have kids at 18, 19, 20 years old. You can have a career, you can do things. Right. You don't have to fit into those roles that, my mom and your mom probably was in. So it is really, really interesting. But I think it's fascinating to have conversations like this, because the more we have it, I think the more people can understand that we women don't want to be placed in those boxes anymore. And I know, Tazima, you opened up with something that was powerful with regards to us being the producers, right? We're only good if we can produce children, and we're nothing if you can't have a kid, And so the value has been placed on our womb, but we haven't valued our wombs. We haven't valued our wombs enough to know that the value that we hold inside. We're more than our wombs. So dang, we're getting close to time. So I want to ask this last, maybe I could get 2 in, but this last question with regards to the historical narratives that have been placed upon women. When you think about the powerhouses and the pillars of women in our society today, the Oprahs and the Michelle Obamas and all the other women doing some powerful things, what do you believe that we as a collective group of ladies can do to support each woman on her journey that wants to step into the greatness, as, say, Michelle Obama, who has kids, or an Oprah who's commanding her empire and doesn't have kids, but supports kids wholeheartedly around the world? What do you think we can do as a generation of women today to change the historical narratives that have been placed upon us, that we have to fit into these boxes, and it's not okay to be different, like the Oprah who doesn't have a child, or so on? Tazima.
First, in order for us to support others, we have to support ourselves.
Yes.
We're job number 1. You can't show up and be like, rah, 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 girl. But like when I'm having a problem, then I don't want to talk about it. I clam up about it. And I'm not reaching out and saying, hey, here's what's going on for me. So one, we got to do our own work and be supportive of others doing their work. We have to be completely like enthusiastically, like energetic about like, what do you want to do? Not like, what do you think? It's not about us giving one another advice. Each of us is our own expert. We know what's up somewhere in there. Even if we feel doubtful, somewhere in there, we know way, 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 way down in the core of our wounds, we know. And if we can support each other enthusiastically and be curious about what's going on for one another, and then do our own work so that we can actually show up for that support for one another, that putting ourselves first, that self-care piece is not just getting the nails done or like getting a massage. It's like, what do you like? Take time. What do you need? And then do that. And then you'll have the capacity to help another. But if you don't put that oxygen mask on first before helping others, we can't show up.
I love it.
Yes, self-care first, and then be enthusiastic.
Love it, love it. Carla, what are your thoughts?
I really think that we need a lot more support groups, especially for mothers that have children and want to get in the workforce, and entrepreneurs or do something, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of women that are stuck at home or can't find the time to do what they want to do because they have kids at home. So I feel like there's a lot of people that are really stuck. So if we were to support women and make more supportive groups where we can help them and just guide them in a certain way to kind of just push them, even if it's a little thing one little thing at a time, but just help people that really want to do something. Because I think when I speak to a lot of women who are stuck and frustrated because they don't know which way to go and they feel like they're tired of just being a mom and just going to work. So I feel like we need a lot more support groups out there.
I love it. I love it, ladies. We're almost at the time, but I love what you shared with regards to the support. So often I've come across women that they're suffering inside, but because you always have to stand up and be, a pillar in society, they don't allow themselves to share the suffering. And in the sharing of the suffering is how we can support each other. Girl, if I fall down, please pick me up. If I got stuff in my teeth, please tell me. If I'm wearing my crown and it's crooked, it's okay for you to reach up there and straighten it. Because if I'm supporting you, I'm supporting 1,000 other women just like you. And I give permission to say it's okay to reach out and say, I need some help. We don't have to fall into those historical narratives anymore where we've got to, hide what we're hurting. And then, it leads to alcohol addiction or drug addiction or some other kind of form of mental health that, is not good for our society. So I want to thank you, ladies, because I'm about to run out of time. But I want to thank you, ladies, for having this conversation, because I think it's really, really, really important that we start shattering those historical narratives that were placed upon us by men and create our own narratives and our own dialogue so that the future female generations coming up behind us can stand strong and know that we can support each other wherever we are. And there is no competition because we're all queens ruling our empire. And so I want to thank you, ladies, for joining me tonight on Real Talk. I want to thank all you viewers that are watching us. We got about 675 viewers watching us live right now. And it's just going to go more ballistic. And if you like the show, please subscribe to it, tell your friends, share it with everybody you love and care about. But we got to go right now because we got to pay the piper. I'm Rochelle Marie Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous, and you have been watching and listening to Real Talk. Until next time, be wise, be wealthy, be healthy, be strong, and support another sister. If she falls down, lend a hand and help lift her up. Goodbye for now, everyone.